Everyone, welcome to Thanksflicking. That's right. Kind of annual podcast event here, just like the 31 Days of Dread. I did this like 2 years ago. Had a like a moment yesterday on episode 339 because we're at episode 340 here, and towards the end of that episode, I'm kind of debating what thanks flicking should be or what it is, and how I should present it to all of you. And it kind of lightning struck my brain. I mean, if you go back and listen to the episode, you see it, you hear it, it happens in real time. And the overall concept of thanks flicking is I kind of want to discuss and celebrate the films that mean something to me. And we're doing this new thing, and it begins with the Dark Crystal. So let's get through that intro and jump on it. Every time I say the films that mean something to me, I feel like there's something that happens in my brain that like creeps through my gray matter that wants me to over explain it. And I don't know if I need it, because this doesn't mean that I'm going to be thankful for the best films, or the most popular, or like films that are kind of in the zeitgeist, in the lexicon. Not at all. No, these are films that, like, every single time I watch them, they're new to me. And there's elements that kind of like vibrate through the movie, like into me, and it's like a new vibration. Every time I see it, it's original. It fires my brain. It gets my dopamine going. It's a little bit like snorting cocaine, doing a couple shots of Fireball. It really is. So we're talking 1982, Dark Crystal. Shout out to my buddy John, who a couple years ago, pre-pandemic, we went to New York. We went to the Light and Sound Museum in Brooklyn, and we saw a lot of the costumes and sketch work. I believe there was some sketch work there. So some of the Brian Ford sketch work. And that's one of the visionaries behind the Dark Crystal. Dark Crystal has 3 visionaries. But we saw like some of the costumes, and it's kind of cool. That stuff, I always thanked him for that day, because that was like a really cool day. But a lot of that stuff never resonated with me. The like an action figure coming out of the Dark Crystal never really resonated with me, or like a bust or a prop replica. And the reason for that is because I think when you're more attached to that, you're less into the movie. You're less attached to the movie. I mean, you might be saying, Pete, you're mad. Like, come on. But I think some of this like attitude definitely bleeds into Terminator, Aliens, and Predator, where people are so into like the aesthetics of those movies. Like, even they'll spend $500 for like a Japanese xenomorph head box set that has all 8 movies, and they'll import it, and they'll spend like their whole paycheck on a box set, and they're really just buying the xenomorph head that holds maybe 2 movies that you might just want. I'm not 8, maybe 4, but you guys see the point though. Like, you're more into the product than into the movie, because I'm sure if you sat that person down, I'm being very general here, by the way, and you you spoke to them about Alien Resurrection, they'll there are nuances about what really works about that movie, or insight to like the mechanics of that movie, just as a product, just as a flick. It's probably going to be nominal. It might not even be there, but they'll talk to you till they're blue in the face about Alien and Aliens, because those are the only 2 watchable and rewatchable. But when we're focused and we're forced to focus on the movie, it's different. And I have a similar position when I buy like an art book. I'm so divided with how I look at art books anymore, because if I'm getting something about Jackson Pollock, it seems crazy because it doesn't represent like the real painting at all. Like, like especially, or like Cezanne and like the water lilies. When you see those in person, they're the size of a wall. What does a book do? I need to see it in person. And I just feel like when we get attached to these movies, we're in love with them, but we're also in love with the like the marketing and the products, and we forget about the movies. And like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, both two amazing, like perfect reboots. No one cares, like, because it's not in these like box sets and stuff like it's just weird. Okay, so the Dark Crystal though. Also shout out to my friend Rob, who I just reconnected with, because I remember going to Florida to Disney with his family like way back. And I made audio cassettes of two movies with his help, because he was an audio, audio genius, audio engineer. What he's able to understand just through sound, it's amazing. He's a mechanic. He works in cars. Missed calling, I don't know. These are a lot of the things I debate with. And you'll be like, Pete, it's someone's life. What are you doing debating someone's life? I just mean like my the way how I view it. Okay, like he's a happy dude, and I'm happy that he's happy. But we go to Florida, and I have an audio cassette of just, again, I made it, Transformers the movie, and I had one, the Dark Crystal. And like I had to use both sides of the cassette, so I, some of it may have skipped a little, like cause just the way we made it. Maybe I'll get into that later. And I used to, like, in high school, like senior year in high school, and probably the 2 years following that, I spent a lot of time at the drawing table listening to Dark Crystal, strictly audio, no visual, cause the TV and everything was in the basement, and I had my drawing studio was on like the second floor of my parents' house. So like that's how influential this movie was. I remember the original clamshell. Okay, it was a green, very wonky airbrush artwork. But like when Dark Crystal got re-released on VHS and was like family entertainment type thing, and you watch Dark Crystal and you're like, there's nothing family entertainment about this creepy ass movie. But like you would buy, I think I bought it at Kmart, and boom, like you were off to the races, because I'm pretty sure there was like a pretty sizable gap, because it was like HBO home video, like VHS release, and then there was a good gap, and then like this pun intended for the intended sequel, but there was like a Power of the Dark Crystal that came up through the years, like year after year. More and more people were piling onto like the Dark Crystal, which is now it has like a marketing arm, like statues, props, action figures, posters, t-shirts, keychains, cats and dogs living together. But back in those early days, it was unique and it was original. It's probably the most original movie ever made, like through and through. I did this comic book. It was called Eyes of Asia. The font, the way how the logo looks is inspired by the Dark Crystal. The idea that the Dark Crystal is the absolute end of a giant saga that is all through the lore and subtext of the movie. But because we're at the very end of this arc, that also found its way into Eyes of Asia. Like, like this movie embedded itself in me. Dark Crystal also. How about this? Like, you want to talk about how we classify things? Post-apocalyptic. So I remember, and I would really love to dig it up, include it in the blog that's going to accompany this recording on akapad.com/blog. Harlan Ellison went on one time about the Dark Crystal, and his opinions on movies are just incredible. His takes on flicks are, I'll never be as good as he. But he goes on about the Dark Crystal, comparing it, I'm pretty sure, to Peter Jackson's Lord of the Ring movies. And he says, those aren't fantasy movies. I mean, we have people in them. They're carrying swords. They're, drinking alcohol. Not saying that the Dark Crystal doesn't have these elements, but the point he was trying to make is that even when we put Lord of the Rings in the fantasy category, or Willow, Never-Ending Story, okay, fantasy film is a very, fantasy world film. I'll say that. Because you have movies Midnight in Paris and stuff like that are fantasies. But when we deal with a fantasy world movie, none of them are fantasy. The human element is too thick in those movies. Too much is relatable. And he goes on, and he makes the point that the Dark Crystal is a legit fantasy movie. I mean, every piece of it is fantasy. Now, you can kind of make the argument that some, CGI, Pixar and Disney, animation can achieve this. And I do agree, Fire and Ice. There's a lot in Fire and Ice that would classify itself with the Dark Crystal with this criteria. And the criteria is that there's no human within the Dark Crystal at all. I mean, even there's a couple establishing shots or wide shots, and it's someone in the suit, and they're supposed to be a gelfling, right? Yeah, and that's it. And the rest of the entire movie is effing puppets. So complex, so well constructed, so deep. That's what she said. You forget you're watching something with no humans on frame at all. Cinema's been around for a long time. No one's even come close to matching this. So every time I see the Dark Crystal, I have to see it for the first time. Now, you might say, Pete, what about the Dark Crystal thing on the Netflix app, service, whatever you want to call it? And I might say, hey, okay, let's watch the trailer. You watch the trailer. Oh my God. Making a little thing between the trailer and the release. You're like, here we go. How long do I have to wait? So you wait and you watch it. And you see that it completely ignores all the mythology and all the lore. It shrinks the timeline. It doesn't respect that it is post-apocalyptic, that we're at the end of an era. So if we're doing a prequel, we have to make it an era. We have to make it different. We have to roll the dice and do something very similar to what Mr. Lucas did with the prequels. At least with the prequels to the new trilogy and the original trilogy, there's a sense of time that passes. This is one of the hardest things to get through. Again, one of my revelations for the 31 Days of Dread episode 1, October 1st, 2020. I don't know how many different ways I can spin that. Is Stephen King's It, where Stephen King's It sells the passage of time so well. It chapter 1, It chapter 2. That no other horror movie really comes close. And because of that, it's epic. The passage of time within cinema, it's people will say it's hard to direct animals and children, and it's like, what are you saying? No, the passage of time, selling it. Well, this is one of the things that really doesn't land too well with Benjamin Button, the David Fincher movie starring Brad Pitt, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. It doesn't. I'm sorry. That doesn't mean that movie was an Oscar contender, because it 1000% was. I still believe Brad Pitt should have got the Oscar for that. So the Dark Crystal Netflix show doesn't go for it. It doesn't go hard. It doesn't swing for the fences, and it plays it safe. The story's not interesting. The design work's not interesting. What you would want to be new isn't there. I believe I got 4 episodes in, and I got completely bored. Which, come on. I mean, it's hard to. I mean, they can make an animated cell sequel to Transformers the movie that picks up right after, like floating Unicron head over Cybertron. You can do this, and I would watch it. I would love it. You know, bring back Stan Bush, like make a similar score. Let's go. I would be crazy for that. But that doesn't mean it's going to be good and I'm gonna have to enjoy it. So we waited a long time for a Dark Crystal sequel or something, and it's whatever. The sequel for that movie, what it implies by the end, it's like you cannot make a sequel. You just can't. And anything to come before, I think you can. I really do. I think you can show a world that once was, and then build up into what begins as the decay of that world. But anyway, so Oswald Morris, this is our cinematographer. British guy, lots of British credits, a lot of British awards. 1982, he dies. 1982, Dark Crystal comes out. This is the last movie that he lensed up. His cinematography sells this movie. It's because of him the movie doesn't look like garbage. It doesn't look like a TV movie. It looks like a real world. The way how he lit the Dark Crystal, he should have got an Academy Award. I don't know who got the Academy Award in 1982. Who are you? Come to me. I need to ridicule you. I'm saying this, and I'm going through movies from 1982 right now, and I'm just thinking like, oh, okay, what are you doing, Pete? But no, okay. So we have Trevor Jones, the most underrated movie scorer, movie musician, movie orchestra guy. Excalibur, 1981, one of my all-time. Excalibur most likely will be in Thanksflicking. Excalibur, Time Bandits, Dark Crystal, Runaway Train, Labyrinth, Angel Heart, Mississippi Burning, Sea of Love, Bad Influence, Arachnophobia, True Colors, Free Jack. Every single one of those movies I just named. I'm just glancing at Wikipedia here. That's a 10-year stretch, and there's movies I missed. I just said the ones that I saw that I like. I mean, Free Jack has a great score. So just Time Bandits and Excalibur. Like, I don't know. He should have won the Academy Award in '81 for Excalibur. Should have won it back to back with Dark Crystal. But with '85 with Runaway Train, though, that was a that was like Oscar bait. So many people were into Runaway Train at the time. That's falling down the memory hole. But yeah, so when I need to be reminded that original does exist, I have to watch Dark Crystal because it's the only movie. It really is. Now, Transformers has a similar effect, especially Transformers, the animated movie. Because like at one time, that was the only way you could do them. And I do prefer the Michael Bay movies over the animated movie. I really do. Just Babes, the music, the sweat. And there's so much sweat in those movies. I love it. I love how hyper those movies are. But like Transformers is an idea that's so perfect. It truly can only exist as a toy. Even though it seems cinematic, it seems ready for animation, but it never quite gets there. But in all of those Transformer movies, they all have these elements, like these scenes that remind us of how cool those toys are. But I would say similar, like on a very similar level, Transformers is just the idea of a robot transforming into a car is as original like as the Dark Crystal. So original is out there. It does exist and is looking at you in front of the face. And every single time I watch the Dark Crystal, that is really what I'm reminded of. And that's why it's important. And because of that, I'm thankful. I am so thankful for the Dark Crystal. Everyone, thank you for joining me. It's Thanksflicking. Tomorrow, we're going to do it. I said it. 1981, John Borman, Excalibur. Holy crap. I have a wedding story that involves Excalibur. Let's go.